Okay, so thank you guys all for joining us for this portion of our membership series, Social Media and Market Research. This is a bi-monthly session where at each class we're focusing on a different aspect of social media and market research. So make sure to check the schedule and join us for a well-rounded discussion on this ever-transitioning topic. The series would not be made possible without our membership series sponsor, OmniRide. As a reminder, we are recording this session and recommend turning off video and muting microphones during the presentation portion. You can turn them back on for the Q&A. Now I'd like to introduce Patrick King from Imagine Incorporated. Since founding Imagine in 2004, Patrick's expertise in brand strategy and digital marketing has helped brand from local companies to Fortune 500 brands like CenturyLink, Nestle, and Xfinity. His business and marketing advice has been published in Inc. magazine, Smart CEO, Washington Business Journal, The Washington Post, Comcast Business, and Chief Marketer, among other publications. Thank you so much for joining us, and please take it away now, Patrick.
All right. Thank you, Colleen. And I'd also like to thank the Chamber for starting this series. I think since businesses have been so separated from their customers, learning as much as you can about social media can be a really big help, pretty much any organization. Let's go ahead and get started. A little bit about Imagine. Where, as Colleen mentioned, we were started back in 2004. We're a marketing and brand strategy agency with offices in Old Town Manassas, downtown Richmond, downtown Norfolk. To tell the story of what we do for our clients, I had to show this diagram here. Our focus is taking people from being unaware of your brand to becoming vocal cheerleaders of it. And we have defined stages and then services that fit each stage to push people through their first activity, whether it's a follow on social media, to action, which is that point of conversion, to adoption when they aren't just customers, but they're either repeat visitors, they're repeat customers, and then all the way to advocacy, where they are those vocal cheerleaders of your brand. And we have services that help push them along. You can find out more about us on any social media platform /We Fight Ugly. So our tagline is doctors fight disease, lawyers fight injustice, and we fight ugly. You can also learn more and check out our past work at imaginedc.net. All right, with that out of the way, let's get started. So this presentation is going to be punchy. It's going to be to the point, and we're focusing just on takeaways, just stuff that you can take and start putting them to work today. We're going to cover the difference between advertising and organic, just make sure everybody's up on this at the same level. And then we're going to compare advertising to what a lot of people do on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, and that's basically just boosting your existing content. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of each. Then we're going to go over step by step how to build a social media strategy, also give some updates to social media platforms along the way. And then a big chunk of times can be reserved for any questions that you have. Let's start with organic versus advertising versus boosting posts. Now you'll see up here on the top, next to the title, I decided to throw in little tidbits and stuff, little factoids about social media, kind of all the platforms that I found particularly interesting. And they'll just be a new one on each slide. So organic visibility is really what everyone starts out doing. You treat your Facebook business page or your Instagram account kind of like you would your own Facebook or Instagram account. You're just posting, you're trying to start conversations, and you're just trying to get some free visibility. Some of the pros and cons with organic visibility, you have, one of the pros is that you have fewer content restrictions. Anyone that's tried to run ads on a social media platform knows that you'll get some pushback depending on what type of content or what you're trying to sell. In a lot of cases, things like housing and credit, if you're trying to sell those sorts of things, you run into issues with limited visibility, limited targeting options. But when it's organic, you can, within reason, pretty much say or do anything you want. The cons, though, are that you're going to get slower results when it comes to audience growth or conversions. You'll get slow to honestly hardly any traction. And that's just by the way a lot of these platforms are designed. There's a little factoid up here up at the top that says a typical business post, and this is on Facebook, a typical business post is only seen by 2% of the page's followers. And to put that into context, let's say you have 100 followers on your Facebook, on your company's Facebook page, and all 100 of those people have their phones in front of them. You publish a post, and all 100 of those refresh their feed right after you publish. Only 2 people are actually going to see what you just posted. And there are tons of reasons behind that. Some say it's because it's a money grab by Facebook. Others say it's because really people don't go onto Facebook to be sold to. So Facebook really limits that organic visibility. Either way, organic visibility is going to provide you slower results. And that visibility, that 2% visibility, it has been decreasing and diminishing over time. So it used to be, I remember back in like 2012, you had about like 6% visibility, and it just keeps going down. Now, paid advertising, on the other hand, you get that visibility. You get detailed targeting. You can go after certain audiences. You can go after certain geographies, certain age groups. You know, it opens that whole world of targeting for you. You also get improved tracking. So if you're tracking your website traffic on Google Analytics, or you're using some other type of tracking mechanism, you're going to be able to tell by the way you set up your ads which ad the people are coming from, which set of ads, even which campaign the people are coming from. So you get better analytics through paid advertising. Since it opens up your audience, you're getting quicker results because more people are seeing, more people are engaging, higher level of conversions. But with that, it does cost, it costs money. Doesn't necessarily mean it costs a ton of money, but you are putting a budget on it. One of the cons with paid advertising, I mentioned with organic, that you don't have as many content restrictions. With paid advertising, they take a look at, you know, how many words are in the graphic of your ad, and if it's more than if more than 20% of your ad is taken up by copy, then that's going to throw a red flag. They may ask you to change it. So you do get a lot of those content restrictions with paid advertising. Now, the difference between paid advertising and boosting posts, the result can be similar, but there's a lot missing in the process of boosting a post. Because they're designed really to take advantage of your existing content, something that you've already put up, and hurry up and get it out to an audience. And as a result, it's simple to do, but you sacrifice that, you sacrifice the ability to do better tracking. You also sacrifice the ability to do more refined targeting to your audience in favor of that simplicity. So there are advantages to each, and I think that it's wise for social media managers to leverage all three. And there's a time and a place to do each of those. And it really breaks down to the following. Organic visibility, you post organic posts when you know or you feel confident that what you're posting is shareable. And to make your content shareable, it's got to be entertaining. tons of reports and surveys and stuff of social media users. They constantly rank entertainment as the #1 reason why they go on social media. And so you have to make sure that your content is entertaining, whether that's whether you want something that's deeply emotional, you want something that's funny, you want to give a little, you want to give people a little bit of a fear of missing out, whatever it is, you have to make sure it's shareable. And a couple tips when it comes to making your content shareable. Whenever you're posting, we all know that hashtags are important. But when you're using hashtags, you want to make sure that your hashtags are striking a balance between getting enough audience, but not too much. So if you're, like, let's say you're checking in at a restaurant for let's say you're doing a team offsite meeting, and you're all at a restaurant and you're posting, you're having a good time. Instead of using hashtag restaurant, try hashtag dine VA, because that limits the geography of that hashtag and probably concentrates the area to more of your intended audience. So make sure you strike that balance with your hashtag uses. And the second way to make your content shareable, tag all the individuals and businesses that are involved in the content of the post. Because when you do that, you're increasing your visibility and you're also encouraging reciprocity. So let's take the same example of you having that company offsite where your whole team is there. Tag the people involved. If you have vendors or if you have partner businesses there, tag them too, because they'll notice that, and there's a far better chance that they're going to share that post out to their networks than if you hadn't tagged them at all. And then finally, for organic visibility, it's helpful if you need to build credibility and trust. Now, for credibility, a lot of times when somebody is checking out your business, they want to learn more about it, want to see if you're legit. They're going to go check out your social media channels. And if all you're doing is paid advertising, it doesn't show that you're posting very often. And it doesn't give people an idea or a sense of what your company is about. It may not even give them a sense that you're in business at all. So you do want to have a regular stream of organic content. And also, for those that are following your page or are following whichever account you have, the more engagement that a person has with your page, the more they're going to see your posts in their feed. Now, when I mentioned 2% earlier, and that's not an across the board, you don't get more than 2%, that's it. It does vary based on the page, and it varies based on the amount of engagement. So when you first follow an account on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, you're going to see their posts more frequently. Just right out of the gate, because you've initially shown interest in that page and Facebook recognizes it. Well, all the channels recognize it. And so if that page can continue to get engagement, conversations, likes, clicks, shares, if they can continue to get that type of engagement, then their organic visibility is going to stay high, and it's going to stay high for longer. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're doing your organic posts. Reasons to do paid advertising is paid advertising should always fit within the scope of a longer customer journey. So if you want somebody to take a further action, and that could be downloading an ebook, it could be booking a hotel room, it could be any sort of conversion action. If you want them to take that action, then paid advertising is the way to go. Paid advertising can also help to expand your audience, reach those people that aren't following you, and reaching those people that are so disconnected from your current audience that you need to go after them. Another reason is to remarket. And remarketing, quite simply, is that creepy thing that online platforms do, whether it's Google or Amazon or social media or whatever, where you've been to a website, you check something out, you decided, well, nah, maybe later, and then you go back to that social media platform and you're seeing more ads from them. And a lot of the time, it's done in a creepy way, but it can be done in a way that is more nurturing to that audience than stalky and creepy. So paid advertising is really good for that, and we'll go over that in a bit more detail about how to go about that in a bit. Boosting posts are great when your intention is to reach all of your followers, not just that 2%, or friends of your followers. And boosting posts gives you those options. And they can also be helpful when you don't really need to do a whole lot of targeting, like a lot of the precision pinpoint targeting that you can do with paid advertising. And they can also be important when nurturing isn't. When there's, let's say you're a nonprofit, or you're like a downtown area and you're having an event and it's a one-time thing, and you want to make sure that you're hitting your audience really hard with it. Paid advertising, of course, you can do that, but boosting posts can also help if the amount of time that you have to get that ad out the door isn't as great as it would be if you can go through the process of doing proper paid advertising. So they all have their pros, their cons, their strengths, their weaknesses. And I hope this gives an idea of when to use each of them and the benefits that each of them can give you. In this section, let's go over a step-by-step process to advertising. In webinars past, I've gone through the literal setup through Facebook and Google and all those. And if you want those step-by-steps, send me an email. My email will be at the end of the slide deck, and then I can share those with you. But what we're going to do here is cover the main areas that kind of tend to get ignored when you're doing social media advertising. So the first step is, before you even open a browser, before you even begin creating your ad, you have to make sure that you know who your audience is. And all of the social media channels will let you define who that ideal customer is in their platform as you go, but it's best to get that out of the way first. So get the basics on who your ideal customer or your ideal customers' different types are. Some of the key things that are consistent across the board when it comes to these channels is the location, the age group, any interests they have, which will vary dramatically depending on the platform you're on, and then their demographics. And that can be more or less limiting depending on the platform. But you want to get those nailed down, and it's not necessarily always going to be, you're only going to have one type of customer that's in one location, one age, one interest, yada, yada, yada. A lot of times you're not going to have those. So what you may want to do is create multiple personas of who those ideal customers are. And go ahead and get that into a document. I have a tool, there's a link that I can share that can help you do this online, where you can create it, you can print it out, save it as a PDF, so you have an idea of exactly who you're speaking to, because the better you know who you're speaking to, the more direct, relevant, and important the messaging, the artwork, and everything is going to be. To help you figure out who your current personas are, go over to your Google Analytics, take a look at your email marketing, any type of tools you have. If you're a restaurant or a resort or a winery or a brewery, you may have a point of sale system, and that point of sale system can give you information, give you an idea of who has actually shown up. you can take a look at Google Analytics and see that, okay, well, these are the people that come to the website, but really when the rubber hits the road, who are the people that have actually been here? So take a look at your existing systems and find out who that ideal customer is. And also, I put a note here to consider lookalike audiences. That I'm going to go into far more detail about what a lookalike audience is, but the benefit is that you're only advertising to people that are just like people that have already visited your website or people that have already followed your social channel. Lookalike audiences can really help you narrow down the type of people and can go a long way in getting people that match the personas of the people that have already engaged with you. And that can be really powerful. And I'm going to go through that in a bit more depth here in a minute. But anyway, the first step is knowing your audience. The second is painting a picture of what success looks like from beginning to end. I showed this diagram earlier. This is a typical customer journey for a lot of the clients that we work with. We take people from considering your brand to be a nobody and working them all the way through being those cheerleaders, because the more cheerleaders you have, the more awareness builds on its own and your audience grows, your business grows as a result, right? But you have to figure out where your ad kind of fits in the whole grand scheme of things. Are you trying to drive awareness? Do you want to build conversions? Do you really just want to stay connected? Do you want to encourage people to share their past experiences? Each of those things fits within this diagram here. And so figure out what exactly you're trying to accomplish and what the goal looks like. The next thing to keep in mind is to determine a reasonable ad spend. And by reasonable, that's going to vary wildly among everybody on this call. But one thing to take into account is that the average conversion rate for all the major social media channels, and I'll show you exactly what those are in a minute, a reasonable budget should take into account a 1% conversion rate, because most conversion rates are between 1% and 2%. And that's across all industries. Some industries may be higher. As a matter of fact, I think hotels and travel are significantly higher. Well, before a year ago. And then some will be dramatically lower. So take that into account when you're setting your budget, that you may only experience a 1% conversion rate. And then once you have those in mind, where the ad is going to fit, what a reasonable budget looks like, then make sure that you can track and measure where people are going to go next. So if you want them to book, let's stick with the hotel room thing. Let's say that you're a CVB, you're a downtown area, right? And you want people to sign up for a hotel. You want them to book a hotel. Well, you need to be able to tell that they've clicked through, been to your page, and then gone to go check out the hotel, which once they do that, they may be moving outside of the area that you can track, but you need to make sure that they actually took that next action. So make sure you have those set up. Make sure that you know your audience, you've done your research, you define success, you know what that looks like, and only then can you really determine which platform you're going to go with. Facebook is the default, and it's not out of laziness or anything. I mean, Facebook is really where the people are. It attracts a pretty broad range of people. And so it's kind of the standard. Really with, I think, every client whose advertising we manage, they may be on Instagram, they may be on LinkedIn, they may be on Twitter, they may be on YouTube, they may be on Google, but they're pretty much always on Facebook to some degree. And on this slide, I've broken down what these platforms are good for, the age groups. In the case of Facebook, while 25 to 34 is still the largest age group, the number of people age 60 and up is just exploding, which I think probably should come as no shock to anybody on this call. I showed the gender distribution, the male-female distribution, and the average conversion rate. As I mentioned before, it's usually between 1% and 2%. Facebook's pretty good. It's closer to 2%. But then you have Twitter, which is not so great. LinkedIn, they and a number of other sources like to report that the average conversion rate is about 6%. But in our experience, I would say expect a conversion rate of lower. That will help keep your expectations in check, and so that you'll be pleasantly surprised when the conversion rate is a bit higher than you had planned. A couple other things to keep in mind, and this may be more good news for people that have international business than those that are just trying to get customers here in the homeland, and that is that actually over 80% of Instagram's audience is actually outside of the United States, and 70% of LinkedIn's audience is outside of the United States. So if you are trying to get a more global presence, and this is typically only helpful for for tourism, travel, e-commerce, that sort of stuff. But those are some good numbers to keep in mind. Then I've also thrown in a couple more. So YouTube, which is the #2 social media channel in the world, even though it's not often considered to be a social media channel, is really the best, in my opinion, of trying to target a lot of the younger audience. TikTok is pretty good at it. Actually, I didn't update these numbers here, but I'll tell you what TikTok's numbers are. TikTok gets like the 25 to 34 is where they're really exploding. And then honestly and strangely, 45 to 54 is really growing with TikTok. So you can kind of get those audiences. I would prefer YouTube because their setup it's through the Google platform. It can be a lot more intuitive, and the type of content that you can use, it's going to be video content either way, but on YouTube, you can get a much larger audience. In fact, YouTube's audience, I show the male, female gender breakdowns on each of these, but YouTube's audience is so big that it's actually 72% of all internet users, male, female, what have you, across the board. 72% of all internet users go onto YouTube about at least once a month. And that's kind of a staggering number. I kind of find it hard to believe, but that seems to be consistently reported everywhere. And then the average conversion rate is about 1.4%. So it's about in the middle of what the other platforms charge. And then these, I just didn't get rid of these from the last slide. So make sure that you're that you're using the right platform for the right reasons, setting the right expectations, and understanding who's going to be on there. Oh, I mentioned over here for Twitter that it's good for reaching high earners. So is LinkedIn. But what is a high earner, and should you be targeting them? Because they're getting flooded with a bunch of ads for all sorts of stuff. And that segment is growing increasingly bitter about all the ads they're getting sent from YouTube because they're targeted so often. Now, you can either choose to compete in that audience or not, depending on what you're offering. In order to do so, you have to learn more about what these high earners are. And I love this acronym of a Henry, high earner, not rich yet. So when I think of who these people are, I just call them Henrys. These high earners will be more inclined to buy home services like renovation, repair, stuff that comes along with being a homeowner. They'll also be more interested in investing in investment opportunities, not shady ones, but they've got money in the bank, and they want to figure out what to do with it that's in the best interest for their future, right? Needless to say, they're going to be more interested in purchasing high dollar items. They're going to be more mobile, so they're going to be more likely to travel. They're going to be more likely to work a traditional schedule. They're probably not going to necessarily be working odd hours. Many will, myself included, but most of the time you can kind of work around a traditional schedule when it comes to days of the week and times of the day. And they're more likely to follow luxury pages, because while they're not rich yet, they are kind of they're kind of looking down the field, so to speak. So those are the types of people to target. And when you're targeting high earners or Henrys, there are ways in pretty much every platform to look at household income, and also look at other interests that this audience might have. And so when you want to target these people, look at things like they're also interested in renovation. They're also interested in travel. They're also interested in luxury pages, because that will help tie your audience, tie your content, your advertising more closely to that audience. And it's going to result in more precision targeting if you look for those outside interests. All right. Next, you can finally, after you've gone through 3 steps already, you can start making your ad. The first is, if you've been advertising for a while, always review your past marketing. Take a look at what your cost per click has been, what your cost per conversion has been, what your click-through rate has been. Take a look and see which ads have really shined, and then try to figure out why. Why did they shine? I've got a couple examples here for some Facebook ads for a law firm. And in these 2 ads, the content is similar, the offer is similar, but one of them screams at you, and you kind of have to be ready to be ignored when advertising. Don't be obnoxious, but be ready to be scrolled past. It was just the nature of online advertising. But you can see the one that kind of screams at them, what we and the clients affectionately call the Cliff's Notes ad, is it results in over double the click-throughs per week at a fraction of the cost per click. And that's really just due to the graphic itself. In fact, studies have shown that when you're running a Facebook ad, Twitter ad, whatever, that having a button that says "Learn More" can be more beneficial to the audience than actually telling them to do something. So this may work in favor of this ad, but it doesn't counter how loud this graphic is, because the numbers speak for themselves. When creating your copy and you're creating your content for your audience, think about what their pain points are. Put yourself in their shoes, because addressing their pain points, let's say in this case, this law firm is focused on getting the attention of business leaders and warning them that they're putting their brand at risk if they don't understand the trademark process, how they can go about trademarking it, what the benefits are, all of that, just getting them educated. And the types of people that run businesses are typically pretty alpha. And this kind of warning thing has really resonated with this audience. So that's great to see. But learn what their pain points are. Next, I did talk about defining success for your campaign. And this is more on the flip side of thinking about your audience's pain points. Think about what success means to them. Figure out what alleviating those pain points looks like specifically for them, what success looks like to them. And in the context of your ad, you may want to blend the two. Talk about the pain point first. And then this is in line with what success looks like. This alleviates that pain point. As I said earlier, triggering emotion can be really helpful. Humor, FOMO, making it entertaining is usually the most effective at getting their attention. Triggering emotion can be the most effective at getting them to act. So you kind of want to blend those two. Next up, setting expectations. And this can be a tough one, especially when you're just starting to advertise, or if you have a very limited budget, but you want to get in there, you know there's business to be had. You have to set internal expectations within yourself. Throwing an ad campaign out on LinkedIn or Instagram is, you get it done. You've taken all these steps. You've done everything the right way. And you launch the ad campaign, 2 days go by and you haven't gotten anything yet. Like, okay, well, clearly I've done something wrong, which is not the case. What we've experienced is, in order to get quality customers and the types of conversions that you want, these things take time. And the longer your ideal customer has seen you, has become familiar with you, it starts to build a bit of credibility, starts to build a bit of curiosity, which may cause them to learn a little more about you. And as they learn more, then there's trust. That process takes time. And so you can't expect that you're going to have a perfect ad that's just going to start killing it day one. Sometimes that happens, but you need to make sure that you set the expectation that this is for the long haul. It may take 7 to 10 times for somebody to see you before they go, all right, I'm going to give them a shot. It's just the way that marketing works, both online, offline. It's pretty much been the case since day one. And so really just the bullet points here. If you do make changes, make sure that those changes aren't all the time, because you have to let the changes that you've made kind of sink in with your audience, and you need to get that data from those changes so that you can make educated adjustments moving on. Make sure that you're constantly monitoring it, but monitor your ad campaigns tempered with patience. That this is a bit of a long game. It's not you shouldn't be looking at like a 6-month sales cycle for this kind of stuff, but it's good. You're going to need to be patient, because customers need to be touched more than once. They need to find you important, and that takes time. All right. So I think, yeah. All right. So those are the 5 how to advertise steps. And a lot of things that really people will blow right past in trying to get an ad out. Instead, these are 5 things that you have to keep in mind so that you're advertising the right way, you're communicating the right way, and you're setting the right expectations for yourself. All right. Wow, it is 9:40. I did not expect this webinar to go this long. Maybe I'm talking too much. So I'll continue. All right. Some tips for getting ahead, and this is our last section. And we're going to go over some of the platforms and some things to keep in mind that are specific to the platforms. First, we'll cover the big dog, Facebook. And a really interesting factoid here, 75% of all women in the United States is on Facebook. It's being reported by Facebook, it's being reported all over the place. It's kind of shocking that 3 out of all 4 women roaming this country has a Facebook account. It's a little astonishing, but some things to keep in mind that are specific to Facebook are, first, let's talk about those custom audiences, those lookalike audiences. Your lookalike audiences, you can upload a spreadsheet of the types of customers that you've already had, your POS system, your email newsletter list, stuff like that, and Facebook can work to identify people that are like that. And that's your lookalike audiences. Custom audiences, you can take your existing audience and try to your existing Facebook audience and try to find people that are more closely aligned to it, so you can expand your audience based on the similarities that Facebook finds. And that's something I can answer any questions about when we get to the end of this. The next thing is, and Facebook encourages this for Facebook and Instagram, they encourage it, but they don't do a really good job of explaining what it is. So it's called campaign budget optimization. There will be a checkbox when you're setting up your account. And what it does is, let's say through this diagram over here, you have a campaign, you have multiple ad sets, which you should have because you're going to have different audiences. You're also going to want to test out different content based on the audience to see which performs better. So traditionally, you would set $10, like $10 per day on each ad set. Like that's what you're gambling with, $10 for each ad set. And you're setting the budget at the ad set level. And those ads are going to perform in relation to that $10. And they're going to be in their own separate silos. Some are going to perform better than others. But with campaign budget optimization, that total budget is now put at the campaign level. So now all those ad sets can now juggle and shift depending on which ones are performing the best. So you're not stuck with wasted budget. You're not stuck with putting money into ads that may not perform very well. With campaign budget optimization, and really it's a checkbox. But conceptually, this is what it does. It puts your money into where your ads are performing best. So consider that for your Facebook and Instagram campaigns. For Instagram, you have a ton of different advertising options, just like you do pretty much anywhere. The ones that I feel like have the greatest potential with the lowest barrier of entry are going to be carousel ads, which are ads that just have multiple photos. And what makes them better than image ads, honestly, it piques curiosity and people get to see a little more of what you're trying to promote. Collection ads work the same way. It's like a slideshow, but collection ads typically work for like e-commerce sites. So if you have an Instagram account, chances are you've seen Amazon ads on there where it seems like you can just keep swiping and swiping and swiping forever. They'll have like 350 different products on there, and one of them is sure to get your attention. That is a collection ad. So if you're doing products, and especially if you have e-commerce, collection ads are definitely the way to go. It takes a little bit of setup to get your Instagram account set up for it, but it's really not that hard. And you kind of do the same process for Facebook anyway. So collection ads can be really helpful. And then finally, video ads. Video advertising and video on social media in general has become, it's become almost the norm. And the production quality has, an acceptable production quality has actually gone down a bit because so many people are just sharing videos on their phones. And that type of approach to video, that type of like organic, natural, authentic feel to videos is actually being adopted by bigger brands because they're authentic, because they're pared down. And a lot of ads that ran for like major brands back over the past like 16 months have taken that same approach, mainly because they were really limited in how many people they could get together. And so they took a pared down approach, and they saw a nice return for the amount of work that they put into those ads. So don't feel like you have to have a major Hollywood production for your ads, but video advertising, absolutely, that is something that you need to put in your toolkit. Now, I do get questions on, every once in a while about uh, how to create an ad campaign in Instagram when it's all through Facebook. It's really simple. It's just over here on the right, this image this screenshot that I have. Um, Under the placements section, just click the edit placements. They'll tell you you can do automatic placements. But in the case of advertising on Instagram, just hit edit placements, scroll down to the platforms, just check Messenger. I mean, Instagram. And you can do, I think you may be able to do Instagram stories, stuff like that. But just make sure that you're advertising on the Instagram platform. It's really that easy. All right, Twitter. Twitter, I think, is one of the channels that we advertise on the least. But that's not to say that it's not without its purpose for the right business. For Twitter, everything moves really fast. So recency, checking your website traffic and Twitter activity for the ideal days to run ads would be a little more important in this case than maybe in others, because the amount of time that people spend on Twitter can be so short. So check your website analytics, check your Twitter insights, and really you could check other social platforms too, but check and make sure that you are scheduling at the right days and times. Next is like a two-step process to trying to advertise on Twitter. Over here on the right, you probably see this if you're on Twitter on desktop. You'll see it in the feed on Twitter in the app, but it'll recommend accounts to follow. While these two here, I guess, are followers of Imagine already, and they'll suggest that you reciprocate following. But this one here, Black Box Stocks, this is an ad, and it's really intended. It's not intended necessarily for conversion. If we go back to that diagram that I showed, the awareness all the way through advocacy, this is really just to build the awareness and the activity, just the very beginning, just to get you to follow and take just some initial activity. That's it. Once you get that type of activity and you run these ads to build your follower base, then maybe switch to promoted tweets. Because while promoted tweets will be shown to everyone, people that are newly familiar may be more likely to do another activity if they now see a promoted tweet. So you're kind of using one to reinforce the other for a new audience. So that's a strategy for Twitter. And then LinkedIn. LinkedIn, just like I mentioned with Instagram and really everyone, they have a smorgasbord of different types of ads that you can run. The most common is going to be sponsored content, which is what you see over here on the right. It's a post from Qualtrics. It's inviting people to a summit, but that's sponsored content. That is what people consider your typical social media ad. The next type of ad they offer is those little text ads that you see on desktop that are all the way off to the right that are incredibly boring, and I don't know why anybody spends any money on them. Those are their text ads. I don't really see much point in them. Typically, the click-through rate's not very high, so you have to kind of, the cost per click is pretty low, but the click-through, and so you can kind of be in it for the long haul, but it's not my cup of tea. The next one is sponsored InMail, which is basically somebody's paying to be able to send you a message on LinkedIn. And personally, I get probably about 7 or 8 of these a day, and I just consider them way too spammy for me to recommend that anybody does. The only way that I would think that these are a good way to go are if the person already kind of knows you. Say you met somewhere and they're not accepting your invite request or something. I don't know, but I know that it's just not something that I'm a big fan of. Next, you have programmatic display, which is like display advertising on Google. It does a good job of like figuring out channels and artwork and stuff like that. But my favorite one is dynamic advertising, where they kind of take a mix of a bunch of different messages, and then your artwork, and then headlines, and they work to find the best combination of what you've given them. This type of advertising, you can find it on Facebook. Facebook has dynamic advertising. Google Ads has dynamic advertising. You can find this concept in a lot of different places, and it's kind of like A/B testing or split testing, only you're testing every part of the ad and having an AI algorithm determine what the best mix of all these is. So that I'm a big fan of that. The next thing is make sure you're installing the Insight tag, which is really just a bit of code onto your website. This is something that you should be doing really with Google, Facebook, Instagram. You should be doing it with LinkedIn, because what this does is this bit of code that you put on your website will go back to that channel that you're advertising on and tell that channel, okay, this person did fill out a contact form. They did reach this desired page. And so the metrics that you get within the advertising platform is far more robust, and you can make far better and more informed decisions based on the actions that somebody took on your website. So always make sure you're doing that. And then finally, for LinkedIn, it can be really easy to over target, because I think, at least in my opinion, for B2B, if you're trying to sell to other businesses, LinkedIn is miles beyond any other platform when it comes to targeting, figuring out their roles, their tenure, their, just they have so many more options. And it can be really easy for you to just like really drill down to the exact person that you want to reach, but you may be doing so at the risk of missing out on what could be a very lucrative and engaged larger audience. So don't over target. Instead, consider advertising to each funnel stage. Run ads for, and by funnel stage, I mean that diagram that I showed earlier that has the 5 steps, where you have the awareness, activity, action, run ads that may work to maybe the first 3 stages. You want to run ads that just build awareness, kind of like what I talked about with Twitter, just awareness. And then you want to get some sort of activity, you want to build following. And then maybe you want to close the conversion gap and get them to take that desired action. Because as I said before, it may take more than one touch to get people to do anything. So maybe advertising to each one of those funnel stages, you may be able to do that in LinkedIn ads, because for awareness, you may just be going after influencers and not decision makers. And so you can develop an ad campaign that speaks directly to those influencers, and then maybe another ad campaign that goes to their decision makers. So those are some tips for getting ahead on the major channels. And with that, I will take any questions.
I had to unmute myself. Hi, Patrick. It's Deb.
Hey, Deb, how you doing?
I'm well, thanks. I know this is recorded, and I was just wondering if we'll also get a link to the recording in the slide deck. And awesome presentation, by the way.
Thank you. I believe so. I know that Colleen is recording a version. I have us recording a version of it. So yeah. There will be at least 2 copies of this presentation floating around the internet.
We will upload the recording to YouTube, and then we can send out a link. It might not be until next week, but we will send out a link to registrants.
That's fine. I appreciate it. I got interrupted I was on the edge of my seat, and I got interrupted for like 2 minutes, and I missed something good. So thanks.
Well, thanks, Deb. I appreciate that. All right. Well, if there are no more questions now, doesn't mean there won't be any in the future. So so here's my contact information. My email, if you want to see examples of walkthroughs or really just get copies of any of our past webinars, we have them all on YouTube. And my phone number where you can get a hold of me, and also our website, so you can check out kind of what we've done for other clients. And with that, I don't see any more questions. So with that, I guess, Colleen, we'll consider this a wrap. Is that right?
Yeah, so thank you again, Patrick, for joining us and giving us this awesome presentation. We look forward to having you again in April for this different facet of the same topic. If you haven't checked your calendars already, I would encourage you to do so, for we have a business after hours coming up tomorrow at the Hilton Performing Arts Center starting at 5 p.m. where we'll highlight CC Bartholomew. If you have any other questions about the chamber or anything specific, please feel free to reach out to anybody in the chamber office and we're happy to help. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Thank you, everybody.